The Enigmatic Legend of Jack the Reaper, Part 2. The Canonical 5. The legend was not born of one murder, but of 5, a terrifying sequence of events so brutal and precise that they could only be the work of a single monstrous hand. These were the Canonical 5, the women whose deaths defined a killer. The Canonical 5 Ripper victims are Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. The first was Mary Ann Nichols. At 3:40 a.m. on a grim Friday, her body was found in Bucks Row. Just an hour before, she had been a living woman walking into the night. Now, her throat was slashed by 2 deep cuts, severing her to the spine. Her abdomen was torn open, a jagged wound that spilled her secrets onto the street. 2 stab wounds, like a sinister calling card, marked her body, and several more incisions to her stomach showed, a chilling downward thrust, as if the killer had pressed his weight into each strike. This was not a frenzied act, it was a dark, methodical beginning. A week later, on Saturday, 8th September 1888, the body of Annie Chapman was discovered at approximately 6 a.m., near the steps to the doorway of the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street, Spitalfields. As in the case of Nichols, the throat was severed by 2 deep cuts. Her abdomen had been cut entirely open, with a section of the flesh from her stomach being placed upon her left shoulder and another section of skin and flesh, plus her small intestines, being removed and placed above her right shoulder. Chapman's autopsy also revealed that her uterus and sections of her bladder and vagina had been removed. At the inquest, a witness named Elizabeth Long testified to seeing Chapman with a man just half an hour before her body was found. Long described him as dark-haired, wearing a brown deerstalker hat and a dark overcoat, with a shabby, genteel appearance. According to Long, she heard the man ask, "Will you?" To which Chapman replied, "Yes." On Sunday, September 30th, 1888, the Ripper's night of terror began with 2 murders. The first victim was Elizabeth Stride, whose body was found around 1 a.m. in Dutfield's yard. The cause of death was a single, clean slash to her neck that cut through her carotid artery and trachea. The lack of any other mutilations led to speculation that the killer was interrupted before he could continue his gruesome ritual. The mystery of her final hours is further clouded by conflicting witness accounts. Several people saw Stride with a man in the hours before her death, but their descriptions varied wildly, leaving police with no solid lead. Some witnesses said the man was fair, while others said he was dark. Some described him as shabbily dressed, and others as well-dressed. Eddowes' body was found in a corner of Mitre Square in the City of London, 3/4 of an hour after the discovery of the body of Elizabeth Stride. Her throat was severed from ear to ear, and her abdomen ripped open by a long, deep, and jagged wound, before her intestines had been placed over her right shoulder, with a section of the intestine being completely detached and placed between her body and left arm. The left kidney and the major part of Eddowes' uterus had been removed, and her face had been disfigured, with her nose severed, her cheeks slashed, and cuts measuring 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch respectively vertically in size through each of her eyelids. A triangular cut was made on Eddowes' cheeks, with the tip directed toward her eye. Additionally, a portion of the auricle and lobe from her right ear was found in her clothing later. The police surgeon responsible for Eddowes' post-mortem expressed his belief that the mutilations took a minimum of 5 minutes to finalize. A cigarette salesman named Joseph Lowende and 2 friends walked past a narrow alleyway near Mitre Square, just before the murder. Lowende later told police that he saw a fair-haired, medium-built man who looked shabby with a woman he believed was Eddowes. However, his friends couldn't confirm the description. The murders of Stride and Eddowes became known as the double event. A fragment of Eddowes' bloodied apron was discovered near the entrance of a tenement on Goulston Street, Whitechapel at 2:55 a.m. A chalk message was scrawled on the wall directly above the apron piece, stating, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." This inscription became widely known as the Goulston Street Graffito. The wording suggested that a Jew or Jewish individuals were implicated in the series of murders. However, it remains uncertain if the murderer wrote this message when dropping the apron piece, or if the message was already there. Such graffiti was a common sight in Whitechapel. Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren worried the message could incite anti-Semitic riots and consequently instructed its removal before dawn. The severely mutilated and disemboweled remains of Mary Jane Kelly were found on her bed. She lived at 13 Miller's Court, off Dorset Street, Spitalfields. The discovery occurred at 10:45 a.m. on Friday, November 9, 1888. Her face was hacked beyond all recognition, with her throat cut down to the spine. The majority of her organs had been almost entirely removed. Beneath her head were her uterus, kidneys, and one breast. Other internal organs were placed beside her foot and scattered around the bed. Additionally, sections of her abdomen and thighs were found on a bedside table. Notably, the heart was absent from the crime scene. Mary Jane Kelly's room at 13 Miller's Court was a chilling tableau. In the fireplace, a grim discovery was made: multiple ashes from various burned items. This led investigators to a horrifying conclusion. The murderer had deliberately lit a fire to illuminate the single room, turning it into a macabre stage for his work. The fire had been so intense that it even melted the solder on a kettle, which had collapsed into the grate. It painted a picture not of a rushed crime, but of a methodical and terrifying act carried out with a calm deliberation that defied human comprehension. The Ripper's horrifying pattern. The canonical 5 murders share a chilling pattern, suggesting they were the work of a single, escalating killer. Each murder took place at night, on or near a weekend, and typically at the end of a month. The brutality also intensified with each victim. Mary Ann Nichols suffered severe wounds but no missing organs. Annie Chapman had her uterus and other internal organs removed. Catherine Eddowes was further mutilated, with a kidney and uterus taken and her face disfigured. Mary Jane Kelly's murder was the most gruesome of all, with her body extensively disemboweled and her heart missing entirely. The only exception to this pattern of escalating violence was Elizabeth Stride, whose murder was likely interrupted before the killer could perform his full ritual. After committed these murders, we all know the Ripper was not caught. But how? In the next episode, we will cover the investigation of the Canonical 5. Meanwhile, if you enjoy our video, please subscribe and like. Thank you.